the last decade was the decade of our IT, of the knowledge economy. The next decade, the story of India has to be the story of infrastructure. The story of infrastructure, which is not merely a question of connectivity, but an economic stimulus across the country. When you build a road, it spans across the country. An outlay there creates economic activity. How do you create greater economic activity across the country, in all parts of the country, rural and urban? Economic activity which encompasses industry, trade, and agriculture. Roads. That's the story of the United States, that's the story of Western Europe. And here is the biggest challenge. And for me, it's personally a challenge of how do we address this? Because it's just not connectivity, it's the challenge of creating an economic stimulus across the country. So the way I see it is that the story of the next decade has to be the story of infrastructure. If you can have a good port, but if you don't have road connectivity, what is that? You can't get the maximum mileage of that port. Similarly with an airport. So roads is going to be our biggest challenge. And with this target we've set of 7,000 kilometers of roads per year, it's a huge challenge. It means 20 kilometers a day. We've been doing 2 odd kilometers per day in the past. And it almost means a 10-time jump. But if it's going to make a visible difference, so Ambassador Pillai, when you come to India and you're going to see a visible difference, it won't happen by increasing by 100%. You've got to increase it tenfold. Then only will you see that visible difference, not merely in terms of the optics of it, but in terms of the economic impact of it.
Sir, I was struck by something which you said just now and what you said earlier. You said the last decade was the decade of IT and the forthcoming one will be the one of infrastructure. Now, I'm struck by the contrast. IT is dependent on the pace of international invention. It's out of any government's control to a substantial degree, whereas road construction is within a national framework to a much greater degree. Now, therefore, can you predict the challenges you will face and how you will overcome them in this 20-kilometer a day target? I should say in a lighter vein that this has been called impossible. If I believed it, then I'd be asking you for your excuses in advance. But I'm not doing that. I'm asking about the challenges you'd overcome.
Well, the biggest challenge is land. And the biggest challenge is capacity building. Now, if we talk of increasing a program almost tenfold, what does that entail? It entails, across the spectrum, you're trying to increase it tenfold, starting from consulting engineers, contractors, financing, most important of all, land acquisition. So if you talk 20 kilometers a day, you've got to be acquiring land, which is far more than 20 kilometers a day, at least on the sides. So the biggest challenge is land acquisition, and in this. Now, the roads are over various states. You're not building roads where there are no states. Every road is within a state or is connecting states. So the proactiveness of state governments, which I am at least now confident because I see them hungry for these roads, putting a proper machinery to be able to implement this land acquisition is the biggest challenge. Then the question of contractors. We've got to have construction companies with the capacity to be able to do this. We got 30 odd, we need 100 construction companies. That's what my message was in the program this morning to a lot of construction companies we met. We need 100 construction companies of the right size, of the right abilities, the right qualifications. And then is the finance. I think all are difficult, but the least difficult should be financing. Because there is a model, there is a market, there is traffic. There is the skills, and road building is not rocket science. It's not that the technology can fail, it's not something unforeseen can happen. Once you've acquired land, so that's where we made a start. We've said that we won't have any project unless we have 80% of land in our possession. That was the biggest risk. Somebody takes on road building project, he doesn't get land. So, the only excuse I'll have to give is that the state governments didn't cooperate. The state governments cooperate. I don't see why we shouldn't be able to do it. And the pace at which we can build up our capacity, how many more project directors we need, how much more do we need to strengthen our National Highway Authority? How does it build up its strengths? So really it's a very large capacity building exercise. Does that satisfy you?
I hope it works.